The world is increasingly becoming smaller and smaller. Through the dynamism and functionality of education, ideas about life and how to keep improving the lot of humanity are rapidly being shared across continents. Outside the overwhelming contributions of UNICEF, the efforts of various global stakeholders in education cannot be overemphasized. In a moment, we'll be taking a look at a piece on the One World outreach, which was put together by Arise News correspondent Leila Johnson-Salami. She took some time out at the recent United Nations General Assembly in New York to interact with some students on their views on the fundamentals of career choice, social reasoning, and cross-cultural attitudes. We'll also be talking to Johnson Chukwu, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Cowrie Assets Management Limited, and he will be helping us to get a better understanding of the Central Bank of Nigeria's decision to restrict individuals and local firms from its open market operations auctions.
And next up on the program today is going to be AJ Dagatola, a frontline activist, social crusader, and poet. And he will be here looking at Nigeria's low budgets for the education sector. Now, to round off today's discussions, we'll be talking with Dr. Maimuna Kadiri, a psychiatrist and psychologist, who's going to be discussing the religious torture centers in northern Nigeria that have come to light recently, and of course also the prospects of rehabilitating rescued victims that are in such centers. We'll also be catching up on news-making headlines across the globe today and review the newspapers with Arise News analyst Emmanuel Ifeni. Oji Okpi, of course, will also be here to fill us in on what's trending around the world today. So it's going to be all of that and a whole lot more on The Morning Show. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on the Arise News channel, and it's now time to take a look at news stories that are making headlines around the globe today. The Central Bank of Nigeria, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, on Monday listed the gains of the border closure since August to include boosting domestic trade, job creation, and also enhancing Nigeria's economic policies. Now, though he said that he was not an advocate of permanent border closure, Emefiele added that borders would eventually be reopened. Affected countries must be effectively engaged with a view to agreeing on certain terms and also conditions. Now, answering questions from State House correspondents in Abuja after a meeting with the President, Muhammadu Buhari. This was before the President departed to Saudi Arabia. Emefiele also illustrated how some businesses, which he said had almost collapsed before the border closure, suddenly became productive barely a week after the closure. Let's take a closer look.
Countries that are, gentlemen, we are not saying that that the border should be closed in perpetuity. But that before the border can be reopened, there must be concrete engagements with countries that are involved in using their ports and their countries as landing ports for bringing in goods that are smuggled into Nigeria. That engagement must be held so that we agree on the basis under which what are the kind of products they can land in their country. Because if those products they land in their country is meant for their own local consumption, it's understandable. But the fact that those products are landed in their country and then transshipped or smuggled into Nigeria is something that I'm sure you all agree as Nigerians we should not allow to happen, because it undermines our economic policy, it undermines our own desire to ensure that industries are alive and jobs are created in Nigeria.
Okay, so there you heard it from the central bank governor himself. So, I mean, it's good news that he's saying this is not permanent, because I guess that's what everybody's fear has been. When is the government going to reverse this? But what is your take on what the central bank governor had to say, Doctor?
Well, I think the central bank governor has made statements that are patriotic, and he has tried to help the federal government to justify the decision to close the land borders. Particularly the border with the Republic of Benin. But I think, the whole point, the whole justification is about boosting productivity within the economy. And it says in both rural and urban areas, there is an increase in terms of productivity. The concern also is to check job creation and it's also to protect the Nigerian economy. So those are the patriotic elements. Every country has a responsibility to protect its own interests.
Yeah.
With regard to the Republic of Benin, I've read an analysis that says, look, Republic of Benin with 12 million population is the highest destination for a lot of imports from Europe, particularly used cars, and food items. And I mean, 12 million population. These things are not consumed by people in Republic of Benin. The biggest market in the West African region is, Nigeria. So you'll find that, many of these imports are transshipped into Nigeria. And Nigeria becomes the recipient state, the eventual destination.
Yeah.
However, under the ECOWAS protocol, while it is true that there should be a free movement of goods and services, there's also in the Constitutive Act an indication that Nigeria, which is the destination or the destination point, should also take a certain percentage, of customs and excise that is collected. But Nigeria, doesn't get this from the Republic of Benin. So maybe that's what Emefiele is referring to when he says that, those countries must meet certain conditions and agreements before the border should be closed. Hence, he says he doesn't believe in a permanent closure of the border. And you are right, we too do not think that is sustainable. He has talked about the positive gains, particularly with relation to the poultry business. He says people involved in poultry business have made a lot of gains. He says rice millers in Nigeria have also gained a lot. What he did not mention is the earlier point we were told that the smuggling of petroleum products across the border has, reduced. But what he offers is the positive side of it. There's also the negative side of it in terms of, cost to individuals and businesses in Nigeria, cost in terms of Nigeria's image within the ECOWAS community, with Ghana, for example, protesting about Nigeria and even threatening to maybe close his border to, products from Nigeria. And then, the CBN governor did not mention the fact that in parts of the north, in a community called Jibia, we discussed that earlier, on this program, that there are sharp practices. There are people who are still smuggling, so it's not as if the closure of the land borders is as effective as he's making out. But he has made a patriotic statement justifying government's position. But I think Godwin Emefiele must also be very careful not to get into the politics of the matter.
Yeah.
We do not expect that the CBN governor, will again and again stay away from his core assignment and be making political statements. His job is with the central bank, monetary policy. He should focus more on that.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, how you just spoke about Jibia, that community, and how people are still going to find alternatives to pass through. It's like petroleum smuggling that goes on from Benin over into Nigeria. It's not as if they know that if the land borders aren't shut, they don't have another way. I have seen them myself going across the waters, going past that Agaja Ilashe strip. And that's how they come into Nigeria. They stay as close to shore as they can in their little canoes, but there's still maybe a good 20 feet out into the water. And they just come and they ride right across that strip. So I'm not too sure how the government is planning on solving all of this, but of course we'll give you all the updates as we get them. Still in Nigeria, governors of the 36 states of the Federation have now rejected a uniform minimum wage that is based on the consequential adjustment to the 30,000 naira minimum pay that was, of course, agreed between the federal government and the Organized Labour Congress. Now, rising from a 2-hour meeting yesterday in Abuja, the governors said that payment of the consequential adjustments could not be uniform and would have to depend on the capacity of each state to pay. Now, the governors also got a swift backing from the Minister of Employment and Labour, Senator Chris Ngige, who said that the adjustments should be negotiated by the states and, of course, their respective state joint negotiating councils. However, the Nigeria Labour Congress says it's unhappy with the governor's decision, and it's also insisting that they obey the National Minimum Wage Act. Well, fact of the matter is, once something is a law and it's a federal law, you must obey that law. But we also did speak about the complications of states coming forward to pay based on the model of not having a serious practice of true federalism in Nigeria, and how that has an effect. But what is your take on this, Doctor?
Yes, you are quite correct that this raises a question of federalism. And we have this kind of situation because of the, more or less unitary system that we run, whereby everything is that this is a fallout of the conclusion of the negotiations over consequential adjustment of the national minimum wage, with the federal government agreeing with organized labor percentages between 23% and, the lowest for levels 15 to 17. Now, after that, labor decided to hold a meeting in Enugu, and at that meeting, labor came up with a template that the state branches of labor could use to negotiate with the state governors.
Yeah.
Now, we do not have the details of that template yet, because after they rose from that meeting in Enugu, what Labour said, the leadership said, was that it would take a time, a short while, to work out that template. But the governors have now met, and they are insisting that their ability to pay is what matters, because the capacity to pay, will ensure sustainability.
Yep.
And we've had some of the states already paying, like Kaduna State, Ekiti State is
Lagos State going above.
Lagos State has even said that it could pay more, given its capacity to pay.
Yeah.
But of course, what we expect is that the various state chapters will engage the state governors, and that the state governors themselves will be fair-minded, because that's important. What they cannot run away from, one, is the minimum wage agreed upon, which is the 30,000.
Exactly.
So the issue is about consequential adjustments. And I think that, labor itself should, understand that, these states have different needs, they have different profiles, they have different circumstances, and we expect that it is a dialogue and negotiation that will prevail, so that it can be sustainable in the long run.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more on that, Doctor. Let's go on a very quick break on that note, a quick commercial break. And of course, as soon as we're back, the conversations continue. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show. We're still on the news headlines, and the Nigerian community in South Africa has began to throw into mourning following the killing of one of its members by unknown gunmen, who also left two others injured. Now, the national spokesperson of the Nigerian Union in South Africa, Mr. Odefa Ikele, disclosed the latest incident in Lagos, and Ikele said that the incident happened at about 7 p.m. on Saturday, October 26th in Niger. Now, according to him, the deceased was trailed by some unknown gunmen and was shot point blank while in his car with two other Nigerian friends. Ikele also said that the case of murder and attempted murder have already been opened at Niger Police Cluster. Now, this is coming as a former Deputy Senate President, Senator Ike Ekweremadu, has taken the case of the disturbing wave of xenophobic attacks to the October session of the International Parliament for Tolerance and Peace holding in Ethiopia, also known as IPTP. Now, this is absolutely tragic news to find out that once again another attack has gone on Nigerians in South Africa, and we're now hearing that the Senator Ike Ekweremadu is taking this to the IPT with him as well to discuss it on the front burner. Doctor, what is your take on the consistency of this?
Well, I mean, the way it is now, it looks like this has now become a weekly occurrence in South Africa. 2 weeks ago, we had the killing of a Nigerian, one Ekena, in KwaZulu-Natal province.
Yeah.
A week ago, October 22, we had another killing. No, not killing this time, but the attack on a shop, belonging to a Nigerian, and injury inflicted on about 4 Nigerians in the Mpumalanga province of South Africa. And then just a week later, You have this Nigerian who was shot in cold blood, and it's unfortunate. It shows very clearly that the diplomatic efforts that have been adopted, with President Buhari taking up the matter, sending a special envoy, it shows very clearly that the South African authorities are not doing enough, or they are not paying attention. And we have not had any report that any of the South Africans involved in this mindless attack, on foreign nationals, particularly Nigerians. We have not heard that they've been brought to book at any particular time. And
that's scary, Doctor.
It's very disturbing, So I think that there's a lot of work cut out here for the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa. They have to continue to register very serious protests because this is unacceptable, to Nigerians, to all Africans, in the spirit of, togetherness, collaboration, cooperation, or African integration. So it's really, really very sad. Whatever may be the provocation, xenophobia is totally unacceptable.
I think we should shut down our embassy in South Africa at this point. Because I honestly don't,
well, I don't know. You and Tundu are always asking for very strong measures.
And I mean it, Doctor, because as you can see, they are not responding to our diplomatic approaches. The president went over to South Africa on a reciprocal visit. We already had what we had to say about that visit, but we said, you know what, maybe something good came out of this. He came back with 23 trade deals for Nigeria and South Africa. However, if these attacks are still continuing, if Nigerians are still losing their lives for absolutely no reason except for xenophobia that is ingrained at the hearts of so many South African people, then yes, I do think at this point we should shut down our embassy in South Africa and come home.
Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will take up the matter. As I said, it will register a strong protest and ensure that, the South Africans, observe or fulfill their international responsibility to protect, everyone within their territory. It is good that Senator Ike Ekweremadu is bringing up this matter at the International Parliament for Peace and Tolerance, that is taking place in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to generate, discussion around the subject and to continue to put it on the agenda for all Africans.
Absolutely.
Say that xenophobia, either in South Africa or elsewhere, is unacceptable.
Absolutely. Let's take another news headline. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has arrived in Riyadh, in the capital city of Saudi Arabia. Now, this is for the third session of the Future Investment Initiatives. Now, the president was received by the governor of Riyadh, Faisal bin Bandar Al Saud, at the King Khalid International Airport. Now, State House correspondent Egosa Egumbo reports from Riyadh. Let's take a look.
President Muhammadu Buhari arrived in the King Khalid International Airport in Riyadh ahead of the third Future Investments Initiative. It's his third visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia this year in search of foreign investments. On this trip, he's accompanied by the governors of Kebbi, Katsina, and Borno states. The Saudi conference, colloquially referred to as Davos in the desert, will host prominent figures and decision makers, international experts and senior investors from across 90 countries. The next 3 days will see President Buhari joining them to explore future economic trends and opportunities. This year's summit focuses on what's next for global business.
It is important then you are here because it then says that you are into global reckoning and that you are also a factor to reckon with.
Over 4,000 delegates will be here to enrich debates on themes that highlight a sustainable future, technology for everyone's good, and an advanced society. The forum will host 12 workshops that aim to identify growth opportunities in energy, climate, health, data, mobility, youth and sports, as well as foods and travels. President Buhari will join discussions on how investments and trade can transform the African continent and the economic opportunities in Nigeria.
The president will be taking part in a panel discussion where we'll look at topical issues of interest to Nigeria. He will talk about his vision for Africa as a destination point for investment in the very near future.
The President will speak on what makes Nigeria important as an investment destination. And the President is here. Beyond Nigeria, actually, he's the leader of the continent of Africa. So he's going to showcase what Africa would mean to the world. The future, it is always said, belongs to Africa.
On the sidelines of the forum, the Nigerian leader will hold bilateral talks with His Majesty King Salman as well as King Abdullah II from Jordan. The meetings will leverage on Saudi Arabia's support to seek foreign investment in critical projects in the oil and gas sector, including the Ajaokuta-Kaduna gas pipeline. Nigeria will also take advantage of the summit to accelerate discussions on planned interest of Saudi oil company Aramco to revamp its refineries and new investments in that sector.
It's very important for Nigeria because they're focusing on the priority areas of our government. Of course, the agriculture, infrastructure, the industrialization of our country.
The investment initiative was launched in 2017 as a platform to shape the future of the global economy. The last conference in 2018 was marred by last-minute cancellations of many multinationals and technology companies. That's because of the brutal murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudi authorities. Now the challenge this year is trying to recover from the excruciating meltdown that resulted from that pullout. From the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh, I'm Egusa Igumbo reporting for Arise News.
State House correspondent is absolutely right, because a lot of people did boycott last year when Jamal Khashoggi was brutally assassinated. That is very true. So hopefully this year's events will take place with more discourse than last year's was able to. But what is your take, Doctor?
Well, I think that the update is useful, and it's good to see that Arise News has somebody on the ground that is covering Nigeria's participation at this future investment conference. And of course, the subjects are useful: sustainable investment, technology for good, and an advanced society. But specifically, Nigeria's interest is how to attract investment, particularly in the oil and gas sector, and how to see how we can, work on a planned partnership between Aramco and the NNPC to revamp our refineries. So we have a very strong stake. And of late, the president, who, as I said yesterday, is the chief foreign policy person for Nigeria, has been doing a lot in terms of, promoting partnerships and engagements with the international community. However, there have been fallout since yesterday when we first took this subject. One is the report that the president, after the conference, October 29 to 31, will go for Umrah in Makkah. And then later yesterday, I think there was an announcement that he will travel to the United Kingdom for 2 weeks on a private visit. And I've seen some people, complaining on Twitter whether the president would hand over to the vice president or not when he's away. Well, the thing to note is that while he's in Saudi Arabia, he's on a working visit. So it's not deemed that he's absent from office because he's working for Nigeria. He's doing his job. When he goes on that private visit from Sunday to November 17, the thing to note is that within the Constitution, that is still within the threshold that the Constitution allows him. So there's no need for any controversy with regard to that. Absolutely. It's only when the president is away for more than 3 weeks, that the Constitution requires him, to maybe hand over to. So, for the part of this, we should focus strictly on, Nigeria's interest and Nigeria's place on the world stage. And of course, the president is entitled to vacation or private visit.
He's a human being. People often forget that, And now over to...
I hope I don't sound like I'm doing the job of a spokesperson.
Borderline.
Just to clarify.
Borderline.
Just to clarify things.
Now over to the UK, where once again MPs have unanimously rejected Prime Minister Boris Johnson's call to hold an early election on the 12th of December in a bid to break the political deadlock over Brexit. Now, the House of Commons voted 299-70 to hold an early election, a result that fell well short of the two-thirds majority of all 650 lawmakers that Mr. Boris Johnson would have needed. Now, opposition parties said that they wanted an election, but not on the Prime Minister's terms, with the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party also trying to secure a December 9th election using a different procedure. Now, during a heated debate in the chamber, opposition parties said that the UK couldn't trust the Prime Minister on any of his policies, while the government said that parties on the opposite benches were running scared of the electorate and once again trying to stop Brexit. Now, this is all that we can take on the news headlines. That is quite a lengthy story to go through. Hopefully, when Emmanuel Feni joins us on the show, we can go into more details.
To analyze it also.
Exactly on that. Do stay with us. When we come back, the conversation continues.